Hey, Matte Painting for Filmmakers community. This is Garrett Fry, and I am very happy to see so many submissions for this tree integration DMP challenge. So, just to start this out, I wanted to just review the client notes that were given along with this DMP challenge, and that was to add trees. So, it's very, very vague, but a very common way that notes are given in the film industry. And so it's up to you to decide where to put trees and how to compose them within the shot. Because this DMP challenge is meant to improve your skills, what I am going to do is try to nurture in you the ability to self-assess your own work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide you a self-scoring sheet, and you can look through that sheet and give yourself a score. So I'm going to go through all of these different categories, and we're going to talk about them one by one. So these are our categories right here. So you can see we've got shadows, edges, color value, lighting direction, perspective, atmospheric perspective, pixel quality, and painting errors. So you can go through and ask yourself these questions, look at your work, and you can start out, let's say, with 20 points, and then you can subtract 1 point for each one that you don't have correct. And then, the beauty of this is that once you have identified some issues with your work, you can go back and you can fix those things. And that's how you're going to get better as a matte painter. So I have looked at every single submission, and I have collected a selection of these submissions into these categories that I think represent some of the challenges that you faced while working on this project. So we're going to start here with shadows. So some of the questions that I have on this list is that do the shadows hit at the base of the tree? Are they interesting lost and found shadow shapes? And are the shadows at the right angle? So I'm going to go ahead and collapse this, and then I'm going to pull up some of your guys' work here. So I have Rebecca's image here. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. So you can see that on Rebecca's image here that we have, as part of the base plate, we can turn this on and off, that we have these really sharp edges for these shadows. And in Rebecca's image, we have a bit of a softness to those shapes. And so this image could be dramatically improved by having some of these hard shapes. And while you're working on this, I would highly suggest flipping between your work and the original plate. And really, your best reference for integrating these trees is the actual image. There's nothing better than what's already in this image. So if you see that these shadow shapes, these shadows are getting treated in a particular way, then you need to be able to match that with your work. So I think this one represents these shadow shapes being soft right here, and some of them aren't exactly hitting at the base of these trees, which, anytime that you have trees that don't have a shadow shape at the base, they feel like they're kind of floating. So let's take a look here at Victor's. Victor here has shadow shapes here, and they are hitting at the base of these trees. However, if we take a look at like this area here, we have this kind of lost and found quality to these shadows. And here you can see it's big, it's like one big block shape right there. And so, and you can see kind of these, with the original plate here, you can see that there are these kind of lost and found shapes. So on this one, it's not like one really thick line. There's a bit of the ground that pops up that obscures the view of this shadow shape. So there you get some really interesting shadow shapes. So I think definitely good shadow shapes is really important. So here we go. Yusama here. And if I'm reading this correctly, it looks like this is the shadow shape of this tree right here. And this is the shadow shape here of this tree. And they are going at a different angle than the rest of these shadow shapes here. So, that's something also to watch out for, is to make sure that your shadow shapes are all going the same direction. This is kind of a flat level ground, so I can see that they're supposed to go like this way. And these kind of slope up a little bit. And you could say maybe this is sloping up a little bit, but I don't think this is as dramatic as this shadow would represent. I feel like it would be much more around this angle right here. Okay, so let's take a look here. This is another example of having, potential of having some more interesting shadow shapes. These are kind of like really thick and distinct, where I think we could lose some of those. And right here, so this one here, it doesn't necessarily hit at the base. This is Jin's work here, and you can kind of see that it's a bit thick. So a lot of these trees, even this one here, and this is a really close to camera tree, and it's still pretty thin. When you get out to this area out here, these become really thin actually. And so you want to have the right kind of thinness to your shadow shapes as well. The next category that we're going to be looking at is edges. So the question here is, are your edges crisp, and are your edges the right color? So let's go take a look at some examples here of edges. So we have Travis's work here. Let's take a look, and I'm going to call out a couple of different areas here. You can see really close. As you are working on this project, you're probably, the edges are really, really important, and it takes actually a lot of time to get really nice edges. So you can see here that there's kind of this halo that's happening on these areas where this tree is on top of a dark background, and there's this kind of haloing that's going on here. So that's a result of not pulling a key or not putting enough time and working on those edges. So anytime you see that haloing happening, you can see that here as well. So you can see that there's this light edge around all of these trees here. Okay. So let me just show you a quick example of what I'm talking about. So I have this tree right here, and I'm just going to grab this section here like this, and I'm going to copy and paste this here. So that's my tree. And this problem of haloing around the edges comes from having trees that are on a light background, and then you take that tree and you put it against a dark background. So let's just go ahead really quick, and I'm just going to pull just a quick mask. So I'm going to make a dark background here, and then I'm going to go into my blue channel. I'm just going to duplicate that, and then I'm going to just contrast it up here. Okay, so I'm going to contrast that up, and then I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to use this as a mask here, and I'm going to apply it to my image. Okay, so now you can see that now I have a mask on this image, and it looks great while it's on a white, a sky. But as soon as you pull that over into this area, you get to see that halo that's coming in from coming in from the sky. And so that's what happens sometimes when you're pulling these keys. It's great to be able to have a tree against a blue background because you can pull the key really easily. However, you can get this kind of blue fringe around it. So you're going to have to paint into that edge or treat your mask a bit more delicately, so, or hand paint it. So if you eat into this too much, then you get these little spindly trees, like I'm seeing right here, where it's getting cut in a bit too much, and the tree doesn't have the fullness. It looks like it's being eaten in too much. Okay, so there's that, and the other edge thing that I'd like to call out here is edges within the ground. So you can see is if we kind of go back and forth between Tiffany's image and the original plate, you can see how this has a really crisp feeling to it. And then if we turn this on, we can see that there's kind of this softness, this kind of ghosting that happens. And so if you are going to paint this piece of ground into the plate ground, then you need to use a harder brush and not use this big soft brush to do that so that you can get really crisp edges. Our next category here is color and value. So is it the right color and is it the right value? And is there the right contrast level? So let's take a look at some of these here in this category. So we've got Bo here. Let's close this. And so it's looking really good through here. However, when I'm looking at some of these trees back here, you can kind of see that there's a bit of this blueness that kind of creeps in here. So if we look at the original image here, I don't see any of that blue that's coming through. It's very warm through here, but when you look at this image, you see these little spots of blue. So you can probably just do a global color correction to this area here and get rid of that blue, and it's going to sit in there a lot better right there. Here we go. So here in Steve's image, I'm looking at these two trees here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this guy. Okay. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste it into the same file. And you can see here that when we put it on top of this tree here, that this tree right here is a lot warmer, or it has more red and green color to it than this here. This has a bit more blue to it. So it's making sure that your colors throughout the shot feel the same. And so this right here seems blue. This is a bit warm. So the solution there is to warm these up so that they're matching. And feel free anytime that you have a question about what the color is of something, you can always like cut a little swatch out, put it right there, and test it and see if it looks right. And because colors can be a bit tricky, and that's a really great way of checking. The next thing that we're going to be looking at is Andreas here, and if we take a look at these tree trunks that are on the ground, if we look at the one that's in the plate, so if we take a look here, see this is the one in the plate and this is the one that's been added, these two here. And if we compare these two together, we can see that there's a difference in color and value. So the value, this is overall a lot darker than the one in the plate. And this one is a bit more kind of purple to it, and this is a bit more green. So you can see the difference there. Also, the lighting direction on it is a bit different. So the lighting direction here is kind of coming from this area, and this one looks a bit backlit. So to fix that, that's a couple of adjustment layers to that you can put in there that you can paint into that mask and make it so that there's a directional light, and also just do an overall color correction to make it so that they integrate together. The next category that we're going to be looking at here is the lighting direction. So the trees that you're adding into the shot, are they being lit from the same direction as the trees around them? So let's go ahead and close that. And we're going to take a look here at the lighting direction. In here we have Olivero, if I'm pronouncing that right, the lighting direction on these trees. So I am looking at this area right here. It's a bit of a dark pocket, and you can see that these are in shadow here. And I don't see anything that is creating that kind of shadow. So I would call these out as being not lit correctly when compared to these others. So this has a pretty strong lighting direction on it, and these are all dark. So I would expect that these have the same kind of lighting direction on them. Okay, so on this one here, so let's just grab, let's do that. Let's do that trick again where we'll grab a tree. So let's just grab this section here. I'm going to copy and paste that. And I'm going to move it over here. So this will kind of give us a better idea of maybe the lighting direction. So you can see that the lighting is hitting it and it's causing this kind of darker shapes. These here feel, right, especially in here, these feel pretty front lit. There's not a lot of dark shapes in there, not like I'm seeing in here. And so where I see this one here being lit from this kind of side direction, these here in particular feel like they're kind of being front lit. And so, the way to fix that is to make an adjustment layer and to put in some dark shapes. So keep the trees and create some of these dark shapes with adjustment layers. So let's take a look at Phillips, and let's see right here. So this guy up here in the top right here is added to the plate, and you can see here that this has a definite lighting direction to it, and this does have a lighting direction to it as well, but you can see that this lighting direction on this element is coming from adjustment layers, or it's this kind of like broad darkening down here and this kind of broad lightening up here. And it does describe the shape, but it doesn't have the same quality that this has, because this has light hitting it and it's creating shadow shapes and light shapes. The light that's hitting this is not really creating shadow shapes, and it's not creating light shapes. And so here again, if we were just to grab this little piece right here and stick it in there, you can see that there's a bit of a difference between these two. So I would probably, with trees, it's very hard, especially with something that's so up close like this, to make this element look like this. I would just try to find a element that has the right lighting direction in it and just throw this one away and find a better one, because it would be pretty difficult to take this and to make it look like this. So sometimes you have to make that choice. If it's not the right image reference, then you can just chuck it. The next one we're going to be looking at is perspective. And so the questions we've got here for perspective is, are the trees the right size at the right distance? And does the ground plane follow the sloping of what's in the plate? So we've got here a couple of images. And in this image here, let's take a look over here at this right-hand corner, or excuse me, this left-hand corner. If we toggle between the plate and this DMP, we can see that the sloping has changed from the plate to this image. So the sloping was kind of horizontal like this, and the new piece that's been added is kind of sloping down like this. And especially, if you were to cover up this area right here and like this, so let's just cover that up. So if we cover that up, then we may, you may get away with that piece right there, like right here. We may get away with that, and that's looking fine. It's just when this river returns back like this, then it starts to look a bit strange because it's not following the topology that is in the plate right there. So yeah, so you can see that that's not lining up. So here we go for Liz. Something I wanted to point out here is that in the plate, you can see like the distance between the trunks of the trees are really quite small. So if you look here in the foreground, the distance between these stumps, or where the trees hit the ground, is quite big. And even in here, it's quite big. But as they get farther in the distance between this tree trunk and this tree trunk are really quite small. And so if you have something in the distance with the trees that are the same size and they're hitting the ground at greatly different positions, then it looks like it's really close to camera, but it is actually not like farther away. So let me, I guess, illustrate what I'm talking about here. So you can see these here. All of these are hitting right about in the same plane here in the distance. But then you get these here that all look the same size, but the distance of where the trees hit are a lot greater. So like this one and this one, these both look like the same size tree. It seems like this trunk ought to be coming down a lot lower to right around here. So all of these should be probably about the same distance here horizontally. So right across here, just like these. These are all about on the same level. And these are all about on the same level. So it's these here that are a bit problematic. So let's take a look here at Deanna. And for this one here, so on this one, we've got an issue with scale, which, is kind of connected to perspective. And so if you look at these up here, how big these trees are compared to the trees that are up there on the plate. So if we take a look, you can see that's about the size of a tree. If we look at this, that is a gigantic tree. And so, and if you take a look over here as well, so these are about the size of a tree, and the ones that are getting added here are really quite a bit bigger. So making sure that these trees are the right size at the right distance. And so I'd say that these are a bit big. Here is Michael's. Here on Michael's, I think this is the same issue here, where you could probably get away with this if this were chopped off right here. But because this riverbank kind of slopes up like this, it's making this area kind of feel a bit strange. So we see it kind of going up like this, but then this ground is sloping. So it's like we're looking, like it's sloping, like we're looking down on it a bit more. Where if you look at the original plate, you kind of have all of these visual cues that make it look like this is going back into space. So I would say that that's a bit problematic right there, that the ground plane is not in the right perspective. So the next one that we have on the list here is atmospheric perspective. So the question is the element at the right value for the distance that it's in, and is it the right color? So let's take a look here at our atmospheric perspective. So this one is Alice's. So Alice here is affecting the plate pretty heavily. So you can see that there's this kind of softening, that has happening to the plate here, and that's because she's increasing the contrast here and then decreasing the contrast here, and in essence creating more atmospheric perspective. Which is making things feel like it's going more in the distance. So I think the what's happening here is that it's a bit too heavy, and so you can, first of all, if this is a plate and you're adding things to the plate, then you would not be so invasive as to replace everything. So let's say this is actually film footage and there's birds flying across here, and there's this deer is galloping across, and there's a little flock of geese that come in and land right here. So if this is your DMP shot and you've been told to add more trees, and you are affecting the whole plate like this, then now what they would have to do is they'd have to extract all of the geese and then put them back on top of this DMP. So I think this represents being too invasive to the plate, and I think there's too much atmospheric perspective. So it depends on, of course, it depends on the shot. The assumptions that we're making here when we're doing this DMP challenge is that this is a moving plate, and you're adding a couple of trees, and you're going to have like moving elements in here. But like I said, if you are changing the whole image, then all of these moving elements have to be extracted in compositing and then put back on top of your DMP. So which represents more work and probably more than what the client asked for. So let's take a look here. Also, so you can see that these guys here, this is also kind of connected to color and value. This idea of atmospheric perspective. So these here trees are a bit too high contrast for the distance that they're in. So if we take a look, you can see these trees back here, the contrast level between that. And if you look at these are very high contrast. And so the thing with atmospheric perspective is that as it goes back in the distance, that there's more of these air molecules that builds up and fills in the dark areas. And so things that are in the distance appear less contrast. So you can see this mountain back here. It has less contrast than everything up here, and it's because of all of the air between us and that mountain, and it makes it look blue because of the blue sky. So anything that's going back in the distance can get a bit more blue and have less contrast, or you can lift some of those dark areas. I think would make these trees integrate a lot better. So we can see here on Emma's DMP that she's put a mountain back here, replaced the mountain, but the color, the overall color that we're seeing of this mountain is quite a bit more red. So if you compare that to what we have in the plate, there's these kind of brown areas that really just kind of take on more of the color of the sky, which is blue. So it fills in the shadows, and it makes everything look really, really blue. But if we take a look at Emma's here, these colors in here are turning red. So this image would look a lot more integrated if the base color of these rocks were blue and not that red color. So the last two that we're going to be looking at is the pixel quality and painting error. So on the pixel quality, the question is it the same sharpness level throughout all of the image? And the last one, the painting errors, are there any painting artifacts or repeating patterns? So let's take a look at those. So I have here the pixel quality. And this is really a question of sharpness. So you can see that there's this element here that has a pretty high level of sharpness. And then this element here that's pretty soft. So you want to make sure that you don't have soft images or soft elements that you're adding to the DMP and have sharp things in the plate. So, or have really sharp things that you're adding and then have really soft things in the plate. So you want to match the sharpness level throughout. Even if you're working at double resolution, then you can just make sure that you have that same sharpness level. You can, ultimately have all of your elements be at the same sharpness level. And then when you give that to comp, they're going to do some kind of pixel blur to your element and then comp it on top of the plate. And that's okay. And that's just as long as you don't have mismatching elements that have all these different types of pixel quality. So the next one of painting errors that we can take a look at here. This one right here, you can kind of zoom in and you see these little bits and pieces that are coming from, I think, some of these elements here. You can see all these little pieces. That's part of a mask that was pulled, and you can see that it's going on top of the plate there. So that is a painting error. That's just making sure that you have really clean masks, and when they're laying on top, they're not, causing these little artifacts. The next one here, you can see, and this is the kind of thing that you can check for if you're, turning off and on your image, with the plate behind it. Then you can see here on this, there's this dark shape underneath that that it's creating this dark shape, but it doesn't seem like it's adding to the image at all. And so that looks like, there's a kind of a rogue adjustment layer that was left on right there, or, wasn't masked correctly right there. So here we have Joe's image, and you can see here on the left-hand side that there's this dark shape right there. And it doesn't seem like there's anything that's motivating this dark shape. Like if there were a tree, then we would have this shadow shape that looked like this. But this right here just looks like there was a mask that just got left on, and it's darkening that area. And this last one here, for Andre, I want to, I would like to point out here that there's a bit of a repeating pattern. So if we look right here at this tree, and we look at that tree, and we look at that tree, we can see that there's a repeating pattern, which, if you're working with a really limited photo reference, then you're going to have to put things in there that repeat. However, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go back and probably paint on top of these guys to make them just look a little bit different, so that the repeating pattern that you see in your elements is not as visible. So there we are. We're about at 30 minutes, and thanks for sticking around all the way to the end and taking in all of this feedback. Go ahead now, and I'm posting this score sheet on the blog post of the Matte Painting for Filmmakers website. So go ahead and you can copy this off and do your self-scoring, and then go ahead and post that on the Facebook page for the group. And like I said, this is a really great exercise for you to be able to do the project, get the feedback, do a self-assessment, and then improve your work. and that's going to make such a big difference in your skills as a DMP artist. So, thank you very much for your participation and really making the matte painting for filmmakers community really fun and enjoyable to be a part of.